When I saw her, the world stopped. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she smiled, she didn't. But because something inside me snapped silent in that moment, like the air had been pulled out of the room. She sat there, in a corner of the visitation block, chained at the wrists, dressed in a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back, her face pale, but her eyes, they weren't looking around. They were staring straight through me, like I was a page in a book she'd read before. The room was cold, gray walls, creaking chairs, murmurs bouncing off the concrete. That fluorescent light that makes everyone look a little dead inside. But she didn't look dead. She looked like someone who had already lost everything, and was still choosing to sit upright anyway. I had no idea who she was. I hadn't come for her. But in those 5 seconds, everything inside me changed. I didn't know her name, but I knew I would come back. over 3 hours earlier. I was at home pouring my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. Jackson's out sick. You're up. Detention center. Interviews at 2 p.m. Don't mess this one up. Just like that, I was covering a story I hadn't prepared for. Some woman inside was ready to blow the whistle on a mistreatment case. My job was simple. Record the testimony, get her statements, maybe grab a few supporting shots for the editor and leave. A quick job. Nothing special. I wasn't in the mood to play backup, but orders were orders. I grabbed my gear, checked my mic kit, and drove the 40 minutes to the correctional facility. A squat, grim building on the edge of the county. The kind of place you pass by and never really look at, until someone sends you in. Security checked me through. The guards were half smiling, half suspicious, like they'd seen too many versions of me walk in and out. I signed the form, handed over my phone, and waited to be escorted in. "She's ready," the woman at the desk said without looking up. "Room 4, you'll be in there alone with her. Keep the interview under 30. Got it." I followed the hallway down, boots echoing louder than I expected. When I turned the corner toward the visitation area, that's when I saw her. Not the woman I was there to interview. Her. Sitting alone, face lowered at first, then lifted, locking eyes with me like she'd been waiting for someone, and somehow knew I'd be the one to stop walking. Something inside me stirred. Not lust, not even curiosity, just recognition. Like my soul had leaned forward before I did. "Hey," the guard called behind me, breaking the trance. "Room's this way." I nodded, forcing my eyes away. But the damage was done. She was already etched somewhere in me. The actual interview was forgettable. The woman, Dana or Darlene or something, was angry, defensive. She made some claims about abuse but couldn't back them up. Her story wasn't solid. She cried, screamed, blamed everyone. I recorded what I needed to, asked the standard questions, and closed my notebook. But I couldn't stop thinking about the other one. As I was leaving, I paused at the front desk. "There was another inmate in the visitation block earlier," I said casually. "You know her name?" The woman at the desk raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna have to be more specific." "Late 20s, brown hair. She was just sitting, not scheduled to meet anyone." She frowned slightly. "Oh, that might be Reyes, mid-30s. She's been here about 6 months. Keeps to herself." "Why?" "I think I'd like to talk to her," I said. "Can I get permission for a visit?" She smirked. "She's not on the press list, but visitation's allowed next Tuesday, public schedule. You want in, request it officially. She'll have to approve it, though." "I'll submit the request," I said, trying to sound detached, professional. But my heart was already racing. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel the cold. I didn't think about the tape I'd just recorded. I didn't even turn the radio on during the drive back. I just kept seeing her face. I had no idea who she was. I didn't know why the hell she was in there, but something told me I needed to hear her story, and I needed her to know that someone was finally listening. The following week couldn't pass fast enough. I counted the days like a man waiting on a verdict, only I didn't even know what I was waiting for. I just knew I needed to see her again. I submitted the request through the proper channels, signed the forms, and waited for a reply. 2 days later, it came. "Reyes has approved your visit." No note, no message, just that. I arrived at the prison a few minutes early. My palms were damp. I told myself it was just another conversation, another story, but I knew that wasn't true. They led me into a room smaller than the last. No divider glass this time. Just a metal table, 2 bolted-down chairs, and a camera in the corner. I sat, unsure what I'd say. I wasn't here as a reporter. I wasn't here with a mic or an agenda. I just wanted to know who she was. And then the door opened. She walked in slowly, her wrists cuffed in front of her, her expression unreadable. Her eyes met mine briefly, then dropped. She didn't speak as she sat. For a moment, neither of us did. Finally, she looked up. "You're early." "You remembered?" I said, surprised. I remember everything I'm not supposed to. I didn't know how to respond to that. I studied her face, tired, pale, but still carrying that same quiet strength. Her hair was tighter this time, her posture more guarded. "My name's Michael," I offered. She nodded. "I know." I hesitated. "May I know yours?" She paused. Then, "People here call me Reyes. That's all they need. And what do you want me to call you?" Another pause. Then softly, "Just Reyes. For now." I nodded. "Fair enough." A silence settled again. Heavy, but not hostile. I didn't want to rush her. She was still watching me cautiously, like I might vanish if she blinked. "Why did you say yes to this?" I asked. "The visit." She exhaled through her nose. "Because no one ever asks me that. No one ever asks why I do anything." There was no bitterness in her voice, just fact, like she had stopped expecting anyone to care a long time ago. I leaned forward slightly. "I'd like to know if you're willing to tell me." She looked down at her hands. The cuffs clinked softly. "I shouldn't even be here," she said. "That's the truth. But saying that out loud just makes you sound like everyone else in here. I want to hear it anyway." She hesitated. Then, slowly, the story began. "It was a Tuesday," she said. "Middle of the day. I was at the bus stop with a friend. We'd just finished lunch. I wasn't in a rush. She was agitated about something. Said she forgot something in her car and needed to run back. She shoved her bag into my arms and said, 'Hold this.' That's it. That was the moment everything ended." Her jaw tightened. Her eyes didn't leave her cuffs. 2 minutes later, police pulled up. Said they were acting on a tip. Searched the bag. Found pills, powder, things I didn't even recognize. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. She came back while they were questioning me. Stood there. Didn't say a word. Just watched. Like I was a stranger. I saw her blink rapidly. No tears yet, but the weight was building. They asked me if it was mine. I told them the truth. I told them I didn't even know what was inside. But it didn't matter. They arrested me on the spot. She walked away. She looked at me then for the first time with pain sharp in her eyes. I haven't seen her since. I swallowed hard. "Did you have any record before that?" She shook her head. "I was a teacher, physical education, worked with kids, ran after-school programs. I had a life. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest." That detail hit me in the chest. She wasn't just another number in the system. She had been a pillar in her community. Trusted. Invisible now. "I was adopted," she added quietly. "My father raised me alone after my mom died. He wasn't a saint, but he loved me. And when they took me in, I remember his face. That was the last time I saw him." Her voice cracked. She blinked again. "He died 6 weeks later. Heart attack. They say it was stress, but I know it was grief. I was his only child, and I couldn't even go to the funeral." Now the tears came. Not many, not loud. Just silent trails that she didn't wipe away. I sat still, hands on the table, heart pounding. "I'm so sorry." She shrugged like sorrow had no weight anymore. "It doesn't matter. I'm here now. 6-year sentence. First offense. Doesn't matter that I passed every drug test. Doesn't matter that the prints weren't mine. They said I was holding it, so I must have known." She looked at me again, eyes suddenly dry. "That's how easy it is. One bag, one lie, and your life is gone." We sat in silence for a long time after that. No one moved. Even the camera in the corner felt less intrusive. Finally, I asked, "What do you want, Reyes?" She looked at me, as if no one had ever asked that. "I want to be heard," she whispered. "I want someone to believe me. Not because I cried, but because they looked at me and saw the truth." I nodded. "I believe you." Her eyes searched mine. For what, I don't know. Maybe sincerity. Maybe something deeper. "Then don't pity me," she said. Just keep showing up. I will. She nodded once. Then the guard opened the door. Time was up. But something had started. Something fragile. And neither of us knew it yet, but that day was the beginning of everything. I came back the next week, and the one after that, and then the next. It became routine. The drive to the prison, the metal detector, the cold chair across the table. But it never felt routine. Not with her. Reyes never smiled when I arrived, never cried when I left. She just sat across from me, hands cuffed or folded in her lap, and talked. At first about nothing. The food, the noise at night, the broken heater in her block. But slowly, like a door she didn't know could open, she started letting me in. She told me about her old students, the little girl who could outrun the boys in the 3rd grade, the boy who didn't talk but always hugged her legs at the end of class. Her voice lit up in those moments, and I could see it, the life that had been stolen from her. She told me about the silence that followed her arrest, how no one came, no one fought, not even her colleagues. People disappear when you're accused, she said once, even the ones who said they loved you. I listened. That's all I did. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't ask for proof. I just came back. Every week. And every week she let go of something heavy, but she never let me touch her. The closest I ever got was once, in the winter when her fingers were red from cold. I instinctively reached to hand her my gloves through the slit in the table divider. She looked at them for a second, then at me. I can't, she said gently. Not here. It wasn't rejection. It was protection. She was building something between us, not with hands or kisses, but with honesty, boundaries, respect. And I was starting to understand something. Love didn't always need skin. Sometimes it just needed to feel safe. 6 months passed, then a year. I never missed a week, not even once. I told no one about her, not my editor, not my friends, not even my brother, who kept asking why I seemed so distant. She had become my quiet world, the one place where things made sense, even in their unfairness. She never asked me for anything, never hinted at favors, but the more I heard her speak, the clarity, the calm, the unshakable truth in her voice, the more one thought haunted me. She's not supposed to be in there. I started reading her case file, public documents, transcripts, anything I could access without drawing attention. And what I found sickened me. The defense had been rushed. Her lawyer had been overworked, disinterested. The prosecution used circumstantial evidence, leaned on the possession implies knowledge doctrine. The so-called friend, the real owner of the drugs, never testified. She disappeared. The court never dug deeper. I couldn't take it anymore, so I hired someone. A defense attorney named Grant Walters. Expensive, seasoned. The kind of lawyer who made people nervous when he entered a courtroom. I gave him everything, explained what I knew, what I believed. She's innocent, I said. She just didn't have anyone to fight for her. He raised an eyebrow. And you're doing this out of love? No, I said, but my voice betrayed me. Out of justice. He took the case. Over the next year, I saw her eyes change. She didn't know everything I was doing, not at first. I didn't tell her about the lawyer right away. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep, but I told her I was looking into her case, that I believed it wasn't over. She didn't react, just stared at me for a long time, then said, "Don't fight for me because you feel sorry. Fight because you know I didn't lie." "I do," I said, "and I will." That was the first time she looked at me like I wasn't just a visitor. I was someone standing beside her. Weeks turned into months. Grant filed appeals, reviewed testimony, found holes in the original investigation, brought in an expert to analyze the police report. The system resisted, like it always does. But truth doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes it just needs a louder voice. Dubei Satya, nearly 2 years after that first day I saw her. 2 years of concrete walls, state-issued chairs and cold metal tables. She was granted a second hearing. This time, she had a real defense. And this time, someone was watching. Not just the court. Me. I sat in the back, hands trembling, heart pounding as Reyes walked into the room in shackles, her eyes scanning the space until they found mine. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. I was there. The hearing took hours. Testimonies, expert analysis, cross-examinations. When the judge declared the motion valid and her sentence reduced with immediate effect, she didn't cry. I did. She turned to me, still chained, still silent, but with eyes that burned with something fierce. Freedom. They let her out a week later. I didn't know if she would come find me. I didn't ask. But on a Friday morning, I opened my door and she was there. Not in a jumpsuit. Not in prison gray. In a simple blue dress, hair down, no cuffs, no walls. She looked at me, half nervous, half defiant. "You said you'd wait." I did. And then, for the first time in 2 years, she stepped closer and kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate, just real, human, like she was claiming her life back. And I was just lucky enough to be standing there when she did. Reyes didn't come home with me after the release. She didn't ask where I lived, and I didn't offer. That wasn't her next step. She went back to the only place that still carried her scent, a small, quiet house tucked between cracked sidewalks and fading memories. It was the house where her father had raised her, the one no one had touched since the day she was taken away. It was mostly empty now. The plants had died. Dust had gathered in the corners. But her father's coat was still hanging on the back of the chair, just as he left it. She told me later that she sat on the floor that night and cried for the first time in years. Not prison tears, not courtroom tears, but homecoming tears. The kind that fall when the silence is finally yours. We didn't speak the next day, or the day after. I waited, I didn't call, I didn't want to rush a moment that deserved stillness. Then, on the third evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, she stood there. Not in a jumpsuit, not in borrowed clothes, but in a soft green dress that moved with the breeze. Her hair was tied loosely. Her eyes were unsure but brave. "I didn't know if I should come," she said, "but I couldn't stop thinking about you. I've been thinking about you every day since I left that prison," I replied. She stepped forward. I stepped back to let her in, but she didn't move. Instead, she reached for my hand, and then, slowly, carefully, like she was touching something sacred, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was magic. The kind of kiss that rewrites time. The kind of kiss that makes silence holy. Her hand held my face gently. Mine rested on her waist. For a moment, the world disappeared. There were no judges, no bars, no past. Just us. When we pulled away, she looked down and whispered, "I didn't want my first moment of freedom to belong to anyone else." We didn't speak much after that. She stayed for a while. We drank tea. She sat on my couch, looking around like everything was unfamiliar but somehow safe. She touched the spine of a book on my shelf, looked out the window as if memorizing the street. That night, she didn't stay. She said she needed to return to her house, to sleep one more night in her old room, to fold the clothes still in the drawer, to sit in her father's chair. But she left me with something, a kiss, a promise, and a truth I could feel in my bones. She was free now, not just by law, but in her soul. In the days that followed, she began to come more often. At first, she just visited. We walked, we talked. She started writing again, not for anyone, just for herself. She told me about her nights, how she still woke up expecting the sound of guards, how she kept waiting for someone to take it all back. But each day, the fear lessened, and each time I saw her walk through my door, I could feel it. She was healing, not because I saved her, not because love fixed her, but because she was reclaiming her own name, her own voice, her own place in the world. And I was just grateful to be there to witness it. The first time she cooked in my kitchen, she didn't ask where anything was. She moved slowly, but with purpose, opening drawers, checking spices, measuring things in her palm like she had done it 1,000 times, even though this was the first. The knife in her hand was steady, but I noticed the way her eyes darted to the window every few seconds, as if she was waiting for someone to call her away, or take it all back. "I forgot how good garlic smells in a pan," she said. "It's even better with freedom." She smiled softly, and it stayed. That was the first night that felt like normal. No whispers, no hesitation. Just a quiet dinner, 2 plates, and the soft hum of a record playing in the background. She didn't speak much while we ate, but at one point she looked at me and said, "This is the first meal I've made in 2 years." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. That was enough. After dinner, she sat on the floor in the living room, back against the couch, legs stretched out, glass of water in hand. I sat beside her, not touching, not crowding. She looked at the ceiling like it held stories she hadn't told yet. "Do you know what I miss the most?" she asked. "What?" "Choice." She said it like a prayer. Not just big choices, the little ones. Picking which mug to use, what time to shower, whether to open a window or leave it shut. Her voice grew softer. "In there, everything is scheduled. Lights on, lights off, line up, sit down, speak when spoken to. You start forgetting how to be human." I turned toward her, but didn't interrupt. She was opening something sacred. "One day," she continued, "I cried because I found a pebble in my shoe and realized I could choose to keep it or throw it away. It was the first time I'd made a decision in weeks." She laughed a little, the sound wrapped in pain. That's when I knew I was slipping away. I wanted to hold her, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "You're back now." She looked at me. "Am I?" I didn't have an answer. But that night, as she slept on the couch, blanket pulled to her chin, I sat nearby and watched the rise and fall of her breath. I knew then, the hardest part wasn't prison. It was learning how to live after it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the front door opening. She was standing there, barefoot, holding a potted plant. "I saw this at the market," she said. "It looked like it belonged here. It was a small fern. Nothing special, but the fact that she bought it, chose it, carried it, that was everything. We placed it on the windowsill together. She began staying over more often, but she never moved in. That wasn't her style. She needed space, stillness, control over her own schedule. So I let her come and go as she pleased. Sometimes we talked late into the night. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. There were days she sat in silence, writing in her notebook, lost in thought. And there were nights we danced slowly in the living room, barefoot, to old jazz records that crackled like firewood. One day she brought photos, old ones, of her as a child, with her father, school events, her graduation in a cap too big for her head. "I wanted to forget all of this," she said. "But now, maybe I need to remember." We put them in a box, not hidden, not displayed, just there. Another evening, I noticed she stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. She brushed her hair in front of the mirror and didn't flinch when I entered the room. Healing was never loud with her. It was subtle, gentle, like watching winter give way to spring. One afternoon, I came home to find her sitting outside reading poetry. She looked up and asked, "Do you think people like me ever really get to be normal again?" I sat beside her. "I don't think you were ever meant to be normal." She tilted her head. "I think you were meant to be real." She didn't answer, but the way her eyes softened told me she believed it. We traveled once, just 2 hours north. A cabin near a lake. No signal, no noise. She stood on the dock at sunrise, barefoot, eyes closed. And when she turned to me, I swear it was the first time I saw her without a single shadow in her face. Later that night, we made love for the first time. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't practiced, it was careful, honest, vulnerable. Afterward, we lay in silence, wrapped in the warmth of something we had both waited for without daring to ask. "You don't owe me anything," I whispered. She looked at me, half asleep. "That's why I stay." We didn't define what we were, didn't use labels, didn't talk about forever. But every morning she showed up was an answer. Every time she reached for my hand in a crowd, every time she left her shoes by the door without asking, that was love. Some people need promises. We just needed peace. And in that quiet, we found each other. I never wrote her story for the press. Not because it wasn't powerful, not because it wouldn't have made headlines, but because it didn't belong to the world. It belonged to us. What we lived couldn't be edited, shaped, or sold. It wasn't made of perfect sound bites or cinematic resolutions. It was real, messy, sacred, and most of all, it was hers. People often ask me if we're still together. The answer is yes, but not in the way people expect. We don't post photos, we don't celebrate anniversaries with parties. We celebrate in quieter ways. A look across the room, a page shared from a notebook, a walk without words. There are moments I still wake up wondering how many people never got the chance she did. How many Reyes are still behind bars right now, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting to be believed. And how many others are guilty? Yes, but still human, still aching, still broken in ways the world refuses to acknowledge. Not every prisoner is innocent. Not every story ends in light. But every soul deserves to be looked at without a label, without a wall. She once told me that the worst part of prison wasn't the bars. It was being forgotten, as if her life had been erased with one accusation, and yet she endured. Not just the sentence, but the silence. I've come to believe that justice is not only about verdicts. It's about who we choose to see when no one else is looking. It's about loving the unseen, listening to the unheard, standing beside the condemned, not always to free them, but sometimes just to remind them they are still alive. Reyes taught me that. She is not just the woman who survived prison. She is the woman who taught me how to wait, how to love, how to see. Her name is written nowhere in public records now. The appeal sealed her case, but her story lives in me like a quiet fire, and I carry it carefully, like a fragile truth too sacred for headlines. Sometimes late at night she reads her old poems aloud, and one night she read a line I'll never forget. "You didn't save me. You saw me." That saved me more than anything. I looked at her and realized that's what we're all waiting for, to be seen. Not for what we've done, not for what they say we are, but for who we are beneath the noise. If this story touched your heart, leave a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. And if you believe true love still exists, subscribe to Written Destiny Official. Here, every story has a soul.